So a lot of people have been asking about my feeding journey, and I've been wanting to share this. I'm a little nervous to share it. It's hard to find the time to do so, but the girls are napping. So I figured this was the time to do it. When I found out I was pregnant with twins, I had every intention of tandem breastfeeding them. I had seen videos of it on the internet, so I figured that's what I would do. When they were born, they went right to the NICU, Lily for about 20 hours and Phoebe for about 30 hours. I started pumping like 3 or 4 hours after the C-section, and I would send over whatever I pumped to the NICU, and they would mix that with the formula. When the girls came to my room from the NICU, we had a lactation consultant come. She did not specialize in twins, so we had focused on latching the girls one at a time. Phoebe was a pretty good latcher. Lily had a bit of a harder time, but I was able to latch both of them. I didn't have the right support, the pillow for tandem breastfeeding, or even a vacuum for breastfeeding one of them. So at that point, I had continued pumping and feeding them my pumped breast milk. When I got home from the hospital, I was producing enough milk to feed them exclusively my breast milk, so we didn't have to mix with the formula anymore. But I still really wanted to tandem breastfeed them. So we had a lactation consultant come to our house. She said that she had specialized in twins, but when she got here, she had recommended focusing on each of them individually and breastfeeding them one at a time. And she actually did say to me that I should sit at home and breastfeed them all day long, one at a time. I didn't think that was realistic for me. I had 2 babies to take care of. If I was sitting on the couch or sitting in bed breastfeeding them one at a time, I would never have time for the other baby. So I just figured that wasn't really realistic. I continued looking for twin-specific, multiple-specific lactation consultants, but had a really, really hard time finding them. And I am also less than 50 miles from New York City. So that should tell you I don't think there's a lot of consultants out there that specialize in twins, or they're really, really hard to find. I continued to try to tandem feed them. It would cause a lot of crying and screaming from the girls, and then I would start crying. It was really, really stressful. They were hungry. I was stressed out. I did successfully tandem feed them one time, which was really, really exciting. But unfortunately, it wasn't something that I could continue doing. Since I was producing enough milk to feed them my breast milk exclusively, I continued pumping, and we would bottle feed them. I was pumping every 3 hours on the dot when they were eating, so I would pump and feed them at the same time for the first 2 or so weeks. When the pediatrician gave us the go-ahead to not wake them up overnight, so they would get a little bit of a longer stretch, I tried to do the same with my pumping, and that's when all of my issues started. I was basically getting engorged or clogged ducts on one of my sides or both sides at the same time pretty much every single day. I was in so much pain. Sometimes it was worse than the C-section recovery. It was just really, really, really challenging. That's when my anxiety started. I felt like I was tied to this pump. I was just having a really, really hard time, but I was powering through because I really wanted to give the girls my breast milk. At that point, I had really hoped to do it for at least 6 months, and I was only a month in. So I kept going. I had reached out to a few other lactation consultants. I didn't really care at this point if they were twin specific, because I thought that this was an issue that a lot of moms had, to see what to do about the clogs and the engorgement. I was getting different opinions from all of them. Some had recommended sunflower lecithin. Some said that'll make it worse. Some had recommended a hot compress. Some said that'll make it worse and to do cold. My OB had different opinions as well, so I wasn't really sure what to do, and I was trying all of it, and maybe that was making it worse. But I was really just desperate to not be in so much pain every single day. When the girls were about 8 weeks old, I kind of had reached my breaking point. I woke up one morning and both sides were extremely clogged, extremely engorged. I was in so much pain. I was really it was awful. And I somehow found a breastfeeding specific doctor about 45 minutes from me, and she really saved my journey. I had been producing about 75 ounces of breast milk a day, which is amazing. I was an overproducer because I had twins, but I was an overproducer on top of that. I was producing more milk than they were eating combined. And this doctor had explained to me that if I didn't pump basically every 3 hours on the dot, I was going to have these issues. And she said that I needed to continue that 3-hour cycle for as long as I wanted to give them my breast milk. So I got home from the doctor and I continued pumping every 3 hours. I was still getting some issues. It wasn't as bad, but I was still engorged a lot and I was still getting some clogs. I think I might have just had fatty milk, so I was prone to clogs. So it still really wasn't working for me. And at that point, I was way off their schedule because I was pumping every 3 hours and they were sleeping sometimes 5-hour stretches. So I just wasn't on their schedule. So then I felt like I was missing out on time with them. I would feed them and then they would go to play and I would have to pump, and I was just missing out on that. I felt like I could never leave the house because I was either feeding them or pumping. And I was tied to this machine. I also couldn't wear wearables because those were creating a lot of issues as an overproducer. The wearables, or at least the one that I had, is not hospital grade. So when I wore it, it wouldn't empty the way the Spectra pump would. So it wasn't really a solution for me. I was still pretty miserable. I felt like I wasn't being a really present mom. My husband and my mom, I felt like were getting more playtime with them, and all I was doing was feeding them. I know I was keeping them alive with my breast milk, but I missed spending time with them other than feeding them. So I reached back out to this doctor and got the options for weaning off pumping. She had said for someone like me who was at risk for infection and abscess to wean, it would take a couple of weeks and it would be a long, painful process. Or there was a pill that I could take that would stop my production in a few weeks. So I had decided to take that pill. I didn't think that the slow process would really be good for my mental health at that point. I took one dose. The first dose didn't really do much. I was pumping for comfort at that point, but I still basically had to do that every 3 hours, and I was producing like 10 ounces still. So I eventually took a second dose, and after that, it probably stopped. My milk production probably stopped like 3 days after. It was still pretty painful. I was wearing cabbage leaves. I had ice packs, taking Motrin every 3 hours, pumping for comfort, but it was still a really painful process. But when my milk production did stop, it was definitely the best thing that I could have done for my mental health. I'm much less anxious. I'm a much more present mom. I feel like I have so much time to spend with them. We leave the house and go on walks every day. We do a lot more playtime. I feel like I'm enjoying being a mom a lot more. So it was the best thing that I could have done for myself and for the girls. The girls are doing great on formula. They're gaining well. They're happy. They're chatty. They're starting to giggle. We're just loving every second. So I am glad that I shared my journey. If this helps just one person, I'm so happy that I shared it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. This was my journey, and yeah, I hope it helps.